Hey everyone, tonight we're going somewhere a little less golden and a lot more gritty. We're venturing past the serene temples and the majestic tombs, away from the pharaohs in their gilded chariots, and into the dust, the heat, and the unrelenting toil that truly built an empire. We're taking a look at the jobs that were the backbone of ancient Egypt, professions that required not divine magic, but sweat, agony, and a life expectancy that was often shorter than a royal decree. Welcome to the world of the most brutal jobs in ancient Egypt, where the only thing heavier than the stones was the weight of the daily grind. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, let your mind wander, and allow the gentle rhythm of my voice to lull you towards sleep. Maybe settle in, pull your blanket a little closer, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's begin with the job that is perhaps most synonymous with the grandeur of Egypt, and also with its immense human cost. The pyramid builder, or more accurately the quarry worker. Before a single magnificent block could be placed on the Giza plateau, it had to be violently ripped from the earth. Your life as a quarryman begins and ends under the merciless glare of the Egyptian sun, a relentless eye in a cloudless sky. There is no shade here, only the blinding white of the limestone cliffs, and the shimmering heat that rises from the rock. The air is permanently thick with a fine white dust that coats your skin, clogs your throat, and works its way into your lungs with every breath you take. Your tools are not the advanced instruments of a modern construction site. They are primitive, heavy, and brutally inefficient. You hold a copper chisel, a metal so soft that its edge blunts after only a few strikes against the hard stone. Alongside it you wield a heavy wooden mallet or a pounding stone. Your entire day is a testament to rhythm and repetition. Thump, thump, thump. You and hundreds of other men strike the rock face in a deafening percussive chorus, chipping away at the stone, inch by agonizing inch. The process of freeing a single multi-ton block could take weeks. Teams of workers would chisel deep trenches around the block, a slow, grueling process of excavation. Once the trenches were deep enough, you would hammer wooden wedges into the fissures at the base of the block. Then you would pour water over the wedges. Over several hours the wood would swell, expanding with an incredible silent force until, with a great groan and a cloud of dust, the massive block would split from the bedrock. This moment of success is fleeting, for now the even harder work begins, moving it. The block, weighing as much as several elephants, must be dragged from the quarry. You're part of a massive team of labourers, straining against thick ropes made of papyrus fibre. The block is loaded onto a massive wooden sledge. A path is cleared, and other workers pour water or oil on the sand in front of the sledge to reduce friction. Then, at the command of an overseer, you and hundreds of others pull. It is an exercise in pure brute force. Your muscles scream, your feet slip in the sand, and the ropes dig into your raw hands. The overseer, often carrying a whip, is there not just to direct, but to enforce. A moment of hesitation, a sign of weakness, and you might feel the sting of the lash on your back. Let's clear up a common myth. You're likely not a slave, at least not in the way we often imagine. While prisoners of war were used for labour, the great monuments were largely built by conscripted Egyptian peasants. During the annual flooding of the Nile, when your farmland was underwater and you couldn't work, you were called up for corvée labour, a form of state-mandated service. You were paid, not in coin, but in rations of bread, beer, and onions. It was a system that built pyramids, and also ensured the populace was fed and occupied during the off-season. But being a paid worker did not make the job any less brutal. Accidents were a daily occurrence. A slipped rope could mean a crushed limb. A falling stone meant certain death. There was no safety equipment, no workers' compensation, only the grim reality that another body could easily take your place. You worked until your body gave out, fueled by little more than beer and the knowledge that your toil was in service to a god-king who you would never meet, for a tomb you would never be allowed to enter. If the quarry was a sun-baked hell, then the mine was a suffocating one buried deep within the earth. The mineral wealth of Egypt, gold, copper and turquoise, was the stuff of legend, the source of the empire's immense riches. But this wealth was extracted at a terrible human price. Your life as a miner is one of darkness, isolation, and constant danger. You are sent to the remote, desolate regions of the Eastern Desert or the Sinai Peninsula, places of extreme heat and barren rock, far from the life-giving waters of the Nile. Many miners were convicts, prisoners of war or slaves, sent to these remote outposts as a sentence from which few returned. Your workday begins by descending into a narrow, dark shaft, sometimes hundreds of feet deep. The air immediately becomes stale and hot, thick with the dust you and your fellow miners kick up. The only light comes from the faint flickering flame of a small clay oil lamp, which consumes the precious oxygen and fills the tunnel with greasy smoke. You work in cramped, contorted positions, often lying on your side or on your back in a tunnel so narrow you can barely move. Your job is to chip away at the quartz rock to get to the veins of gold, or at the sandstone to find the seams of turquoise. Your tools are the same as the quarryman's, a soft copper chisel and a heavy stone. Tink, tink, tink. The sound echoes endlessly in the confined space, a monotonous rhythm punctuated by the coughing of the man next to you. The dangers are ever present. The tunnels are poorly supported, often just raw earth and rock. Cave-ins are a constant threat, ready to bury you alive in an instant. The lack of ventilation means the air is poisonous, and the dust leads to silicosis, a deadly lung disease that would slowly suffocate you over the years if something else didn't kill you first. Dehydration is another constant enemy. Water is more precious than gold here, rationed strictly. You're always thirsty, your body aching from the heat and the grueling labour. The gold mining process was particularly toxic. After the quartz was hauled to the surface, it had to be crushed into a fine powder. This work was often done by women and children. The powder was then washed over sloped surfaces, and sometimes mercury was used to separate the fine gold dust from the rock. The workers were exposed to the toxic mercury fumes, leading to nerve damage, madness, and a slow, painful death. You are watched over by brutal guards and overseers, who ensure that no one steals any of the precious minerals. The punishment for theft was swift and often fatal. Your life is one of utter misery, a grim cycle of chipping rock in the dark, hauling heavy baskets of ore to the surface, and collapsing in exhaustion in a crude shelter, only to do it all again the next day. There is no escape. You are surrounded by a vast, unforgiving desert. You work until you die, your body left in an unmarked grave in the sand, a forgotten sacrifice to the glittering treasures that would adorn the tombs of pharaohs and the necks of queens. You are the invisible foundation of an empire's opulence, your suffering transmuted into the golden artifacts that would mesmerize the world for millennia to come. If you managed to avoid the living death of the mines or the sun-baked agony of the quarries, you might have found yourself in what seems like a more idyllic profession, the farmer. After all, you get to work by the life-giving Nile, the source of all of Egypt's prosperity. But the reality of agriculture was a different kind of brutal, a relentless cycle of back-breaking labour that was entirely at the mercy of the river's whims. Your life is governed by 3 seasons: Akhet, the inundation; Pere, the growing season; and Shemu, the harvest. During the inundation, when the Nile floods its banks and deposits a fresh layer of fertile black silt, you cannot work your fields. This is when you're likely conscripted for the corvée labour, sent off to haul stones for the pharaoh's latest construction project. When the waters recede, the real work begins. The land is a thick, heavy mud, and you must plough it. Your plough is a simple wooden affair, barely scratching the surface, pulled by a pair of oxen if you're fortunate, or by you and your sons if you are not. You walk barefoot in the thick mud, your feet constantly wet, your muscles straining to guide the plough in straight lines. Once the field is ploughed, you sow the seeds, barley, emmer wheat, or flax, by hand, scattering them across the dark earth. Then you drive livestock, perhaps sheep or goats, across the field to trample the seeds into the mud. But the most grueling task is irrigation. While the flood provides the initial moisture, the growing crops need constant water under the hot Egyptian sun. This meant a life spent lifting water. Your primary tool is the shaduf, a simple but ingenious device consisting of a long pole, pivoted on a stand, with a bucket on one end and a heavy counterweight of clay on the other. You stand by the irrigation canal all day, every day, in a mind-numbing, muscle-burning rhythm. You pull the pole down, dipping the bucket into the water. The counterweight then helps you lift the full, heavy bucket. You swing the pole around and empty the water into a smaller channel that leads to your fields. Then you do it again, and again, and again, thousands of times a day. Your back aches, your shoulders burn, and your hands are calloused and cracked, and the water itself is a source of danger. The stagnant pools of the irrigation canals are breeding grounds for parasites. Many farmers suffered from schistosomiasis, a debilitating disease caused by flatworms that enter the body through the skin. It caused fever, chronic pain, and organ damage, slowly sapping the strength of those who worked the fields. You also share the river banks with crocodiles and hippos, both of which were responsible for countless deaths. At the end of the season, during the harvest, you work frantically to bring in your crops before they are scorched by the sun, cutting the grain with a simple sickle. And after all this toil, your reward is to see a significant portion of your harvest taken away by the pharaoh's tax collectors. They arrive with their scribes and their measuring ropes, calculating your yield and taking the state's share, leaving you with just enough to feed your family until the next flood. A bad flood, too high or too low, could mean famine and starvation. Your entire existence is a gamble on the mood of the river. Perhaps you wished for a more glorious life, one of honour and adventure in the pharaoh's army. Be careful what you wish for. For the common infantryman, life as a soldier in the New Kingdom was another form of brutal servitude. You are a conscript, pulled from your village to serve a term of several years. Your training is relentless. You are taught to march in disciplined formations for endless miles under the desert sun, carrying a heavy shield made of cowhide, a spear, and a battle axe or a short sword known as a khopesh. The discipline is enforced with the stick. Laziness, disobedience, or cowardice is met with beatings. You learn to obey without question, to become a cog in the pharaoh's war machine. Life on a military campaign is one of immense hardship. You march for weeks through hostile territory, whether it's the blistering deserts of Nubia to the south or the arid lands of the Levant to the east. Your rations are the same monotonous fare of bread and dried fish. Water is scarce and often foul. You're plagued by sandstorms, by biting insects, and by the constant threat of ambush. When battle comes, it is not the neat, heroic affair depicted on temple walls. It is a terrifying, chaotic crush of bodies. You stand in a tight formation, a wall of shields, as the enemy, perhaps the Hittites or the Sea Peoples, charges towards you. The air fills with a storm of arrows. Then comes the clash, a brutal close-quarters struggle of stabbing spears, hacking axes, and the screams of dying men. You're fighting for your life, your movements restricted by the men packed in around you, the ground slick with blood. If you are wounded, medical care is rudimentary. A clean wound might be stitched, but a serious one, or one that becomes infected, means a slow, agonizing death far from home. If you survive, your reward might be a small plot of land or a share of the spoils. But many soldiers returned from campaigns maimed, sick, or haunted by the horrors of war, their service to the divine pharaoh earning them little more than a lifetime of pain. But there is one job that combines physical unpleasantness, psychological horror, and social ostracism into a truly unique form of brutal employment: the embalmer. Specifically the lower-ranking embalmer's assistant. While the chief embalmer, the controller of mysteries and was a high-ranking priest with sacred knowledge, the hands-on work was a messy, foul, and ritually unclean business. Your workshop is the Wabet, the place of purification, a name that is profoundly ironic, as the air within is thick with the overwhelming stench of death, decay, and the chemicals used in the mummification process, primarily natron, a natural salt. Your most crucial and most reviled task might be that of the paraschistes, the man who made the initial incision. According to some Greek accounts, because this act of cutting the body was seen as a violation, the paraschistes would be ritually chased away and have stones thrown at him by the other workers after making the cut, a bizarre piece of theatre to absolve the community of the necessary sin. Inside the Wabet, your work is a ghastly, methodical process. After the body is washed, you assist in the removal of the internal organs. The liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines are pulled out through the incision in the abdomen. They are washed, dried, and placed in 4 canopic jars, each protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus. But the most infamous task is the removal of the brain. The Egyptians did not consider the brain to be the seat of intelligence. That was the heart. To them the brain was little more than cranial stuffing, and so it was removed in the most undignified way possible. A long metal hook was inserted into the nostril, pushed through the thin ethmoid bone and into the cranial cavity. You would then use the hook to stir the brain into a semi-liquid state, a horrifying scramble. The head of the deceased was then tilted, and the liquefied brain would simply pour out through the nose. It was a delicate but ghastly procedure. The heart, believed to be essential for judgment in the afterlife, was carefully left in place. Once the body was emptied, it was packed inside and out with bags of natron salt for 40 days. This process completely desiccated the tissues, preventing decomposition. After the 40 days, the body was a dry, shrunken, and leathery husk. Your job was to wash the dried body once more, anoint it with fragrant oils and resins, and then begin the long, tedious process of wrapping it in hundreds of yards of fine linen bandages. While this work was sacred and vital for ensuring the deceased's passage to the afterlife, it also made you a social outcast. You were constantly in contact with death, a source of ritual impurity. You lived on the fringes of society, respected for your necessary skill but shunned for the nature of your work. You spent your days surrounded by the dead, your hands touching things no one else would touch, your lungs breathing an air of decay, all to ensure that someone else's soul could live forever. In the sprawling, magnificent capital of the Han Dynasty, the city of Chang'an, your life is one of profound and terrifying responsibility. You're not a general commanding armies, nor a minister advising the emperor on matters of state. You are a court musician, a flute-player, and your instrument is a simple length of polished bamboo with carefully drilled holes. Yet, in a world governed by the intricate dance of cosmic harmony, your breath, channeled through that hollow tube, is as vital to the stability of the empire as any fortress wall or imperial decree. To play a wrong note is not merely an artistic failure, it is a crack in the fabric of the universe, an invitation to chaos. Your name is Wei, and your job is to breathe order into the world, one perfect celestial note at a time. To understand your role, you must first understand the concept of yue, or music, as the Han court saw it. This was not entertainment. It was a branch of cosmology, a sister science to astronomy and mathematics. Drawing on the teachings of Confucius and his disciples, the Han emperors believed that the universe was a single, interconnected organism, bound together by a series of corresponding harmonies. The 5 elements, the 5 directions, the 5 primary colours, and the 5 musical notes were all part of this grand cosmic symphony. Proper music, known as yayue, or elegant music, was a direct reflection of this harmony. It was slow, serene, and mathematically precise. Its purpose was to cultivate virtue in the listener, to regulate the passions, and to ensure that the actions of humanity were in perfect alignment with the will of heaven. Improper music, on the other hand, was seen as a dangerous and corrupting force. The fast, emotional, and popular folk tunes played in taverns and marketplaces were dismissed as cheng yin, the sounds of a fallen state. This kind of music was believed to stir up base emotions, encourage licentiousness, and lead to social and political chaos. The downfall of a dynasty, it was said, could be heard in its music long before the armies began to march. As a court musician, you are therefore a guardian of order. You are a technician of virtue. The melodies you play are not meant to be exciting or passionate. They are meant to be correct. They are sonic architecture, designed to uphold the very pillars of the state. Your life is governed by the Imperial Music Bureau, the UFU. This was a real and powerful government institution, re-established during the Han Dynasty to oversee all ritual and courtly music. The Bureau employed hundreds of musicians, composers and dancers, and was responsible for everything from standardizing the pitch of instruments to composing the hymns for imperial sacrifices. You were likely recruited as a young boy, chosen for your musical talent and your calm, disciplined demeanour. Your training was long and arduous. You would spend years under the tutelage of a master, learning not just how to play the flute, or dizi, but how to understand its place in the cosmic order. You memorized hundreds of prescribed melodies for every conceivable ritual, for banquets, for coronations, for sacrifices, for the changing of the seasons. You learned the complex theories of tones, modes, and their relationship to the calendar and the stars. A single, sharp or flat note was an offence against harmony, and the consequences for such a mistake, especially during a high-profile ritual, could be severe. Let's imagine your most common duty, playing at a great imperial banquet. The hall is a vast timber-frame space, filled with dozens of low tables laden with food. The air is thick with the scent of roasted meats, spiced wine, and burning incense. The emperor sits on a raised dais, a remote and divine figure. Below him, officials, nobles, and visiting dignitaries are seated according to a rigid protocol of rank. Your place is with the other musicians, positioned to the side of the hall, a silent and unobtrusive presence until you are called upon. You do not play continuously to provide background ambience. Your music is punctuation in a long and solemn ceremony. The banquet begins. As the first course of dishes is brought in by a procession of servants, a signal is given. The great bronze bells are struck, their deep resonant tones washing over the hall. Then the stone chimes add a layer of clear percussive notes. And then it is your turn. On cue from the orchestra leader, you and the other flute players raise your bamboo dizi to your lips. The melody you play is simple, high, and pure. It is a sound meant to evoke clarity, nature, and the heavens. It is not emotional. It is designed to cleanse the palate of the soul, to prepare the gathered officials to receive the emperor's generosity with a clear and virtuous mind. You play a short, prescribed piece, and then fall silent. The music returns at specific intervals. During a formal toast from the emperor, when a rare and exotic dish is presented, or when a poem is recited. Your flute is a voice in this ritual, a sound that elevates the simple act of eating into a performance of cosmic and political order. An even more solemn duty is your role in the great sacrifices. Perhaps it is the annual sacrifice to heaven, performed by the emperor at a grand open-air altar, or a more intimate rite at the ancestral temple, honouring the spirits of the past Han emperors. The ceremony is a magnificent piece of theatre. You are part of a great procession, marching in a specific, designated order. Your uniform is a simple silk robe, its colour dictated by the season and the nature of the ritual. You walk with slow, deliberate steps, your flute held ready. As the emperor ascends the altar and makes his offerings, jades, silks, fine food and wine, the orchestra begins to play. The music is ancient, a hymn believed to have been passed down for centuries. The drums provide a slow, steady heartbeat. The zithers create a sparse atmospheric texture, and your flute soars over it all, its clear, piercing voice thought to be the sound that could travel from the human world to the realm of the gods. Your breath, the most intimate and vital part of your being, becomes a vessel, carrying the emperor's prayers to the heavens or to the waiting ancestors. You play with absolute concentration. Your fingers move precisely over the holes of the flute. Your breath is controlled and even. You're not expressing your own feelings. You are channeling a sacred power. The belief was that if the music was performed perfectly, the gods would be pleased, the ancestors would be honoured, and the empire would be blessed with good harvests, stability, and a long-lasting dynasty. If the music was flawed, it was a terrible omen, a sign that the connection between heaven and the emperor was weak. The pressure on you, a single flute player in a vast orchestra, is immense. You're a small but essential gear in the great clockwork of the universe. Your life outside of these rituals is one of quiet discipline. You live in quarters provided by the Music Bureau, alongside the other musicians. Your days are spent practicing, rehearsing, and studying musical theory. You might also be tasked with helping to craft new instruments or copy musical scores. Your flute is your constant companion. It is likely made from a carefully selected piece of bamboo, which has been aged, dried, and polished until it is smooth and resonant. You know its every imperfection, its every tonal nuance. You care for it meticulously, wrapping it in silk when not in use, and ensuring it is never exposed to extreme temperatures that could crack the wood. You are a servant of the state, an artisan of sound, but your position is a precarious one. While a skilled court musician was respected, you were still a servant. Your fate was tied to the whims of the emperor and the shifting political currents of the court. A new emperor might prefer a different style of music, or a powerful minister might decide to cut the music bureau's budget. Unlike the great generals or scholars, your name will not be recorded in the official histories. You're an anonymous artist, one of hundreds who provided the sacred soundtrack for an empire. As you grow older, you might become a teacher yourself, passing on the ancient melodies and the profound philosophy behind them to a new generation of flute players. You would teach them, as you were taught, that a musician's duty is not to be celebrated, but to serve harmony. And as you sit with your young apprentice, showing him how to shape his breath to produce a note that is pure and unwavering, you're doing more than teaching him how to play an instrument. You're teaching him how to hold the universe in balance. In the modern world, salt is an afterthought, a cheap, ubiquitous commodity shaken carelessly over a meal. But in the medieval world, and for millennia before it, salt was life. It was a preservative that kept meat from rotting through the winter, a vital nutrient for both humans and livestock, and in many places it was a form of currency, a white gold more precious than the metal it was often traded for. And nowhere was the pursuit of this white gold more brutal, more dangerous, and more epic in scale than in the vast, unforgiving heart of the Sahara Desert. Here, in some of the most inhospitable places on earth, entire communities toiled under a merciless sun to harvest the great salt deposits that lay beneath the sand, their labour fueling a legendary trade route that connected empires and created unimaginable wealth for everyone except, of course, the people who actually did the work. Your life as a salt harvester begins and ends in a place that can barely be called a settlement. Let's call it Tagaza, a real and notorious salt mining centre in what is now northern Mali. There is nothing here. No trees, no grass, no sign of life beyond the humans and the camels that sustain them. The landscape is a flat, white, crystalline expanse, a salt pan that stretches to a horizon that shimmers with heat. The glare from the salt-crusted ground is so intense that it feels like you are walking on a mirror reflecting a hostile sun. The air is bone dry, and the heat is a physical presence, a heavy blanket that smothers you from dawn until dusk. This is your world, a place defined by two things, salt and suffering. Who are you? You're not a proud merchant or a noble Tuareg nomad. The men who perform the back-breaking labour of cutting the salt are often at the very bottom of the social ladder. Many are enslaved people, captured in conflicts in the more fertile lands to the south, and sold to the mine overseers. Others are debtors, working off a lifetime of obligations, or simply impoverished labourers with no other options. Your home is as stark as the landscape. The houses in Sahara are not built of wood or mud brick, for there is none. They are built from the only resource available, salt. The walls are constructed from thick, rough-hewn slabs of salt, and the roofs are often little more than stretched camel hides. Your dwelling is dark, cramped, and offers little respite from the oppressive heat. It is a house made of the very substance you're forced to spend your life quarrying. Your diet is a testament to the logistics of the desert. Nothing grows here, so every single calorie you consume must be brought in by the great caravans. You subsist on a monotonous diet of dried dates, millet flour, and occasionally a bit of tough, dried camel meat. Fresh water is the truest luxury, scarcer and more valuable than the salt you mine. It is brought in on the same caravans, rationed out in small, precious amounts. You're in a constant state of thirst, your body perpetually dehydrated. The salty air and the salt that coats your skin only make it worse. It is a life of profound deprivation, lived on the very edge of human endurance. Your days are not your own. They belong to the mine, to the overseer, and to the endless punishing work. The process of harvesting the salt is a grueling, multi-stage ordeal that has changed little in over 1,000 years. Your day begins before the sun is at its most punishing. The first task is to clear the top layer of sand and loose, dirty salt to expose the pure, crystalline deposits beneath. You use simple, long-handled shovels and wicker baskets to haul away the overburden, a repetitive, muscle-straining task that can take hours. Finally you reach the prize, the thick, solid beds of pure rock salt. This is where the real work, the cutting, begins. Your tool is a crude, heavy pickaxe. You stand directly under the sun, your body casting a sharp, dark shadow on the blinding white ground, and you begin to hack at the salt. The salt is dense and hard, and each swing of the pick sends a jarring shock up your arms and into your shoulders. You work in a team, cut in deep trenches into the salt bed to isolate large sections. The work is rhythmic, a chorus of heavy breathing and the sharp thwack of iron on salt. The overseers watch, ensuring the pace never slackens. There is no shade, no rest, only the relentless sun and the endless white. Once a large section is trenched, it is broken into smaller standardized slabs, or bars. These slabs are the currency of the Sahara, each one cut to a specific size and weight, typically around 2 meters long and weighing over 200 pounds. Lifting and moving these heavy, awkward slabs is another feat of immense physical exertion. The sharp edges of the salt cut into your hands, and the fine salt dust gets into every cut, stinging and burning. Your skin is perpetually cracked and raw. This work continues day after day, week after week. The only break in the monotony is the arrival and departure of the great salt caravans. These are the arteries that connect your desolate world to the rest of humanity. The salt you cut has no value here. Its worth is created by the long, perilous journey it is about to undertake. The caravans are led by the Tuareg, the legendary blue men of the desert, so called for the indigo-dyed veils they wear. They are masters of the Sahara, expert navigators who can read the stars, the winds, and the subtle shifts in the sand to guide their vast trains of camels across hundreds of miles of featureless terrain. The arrival of a caravan is a moment of great activity. The camels, the ships of the desert, are loaded with the salt slabs you have harvested. Each camel can carry 2 to 4 of these heavy bars, one on each side of its hump. The loading is a precise and difficult process, ensuring the weight is perfectly balanced for the long journey ahead. You watch as the caravan prepares to depart, a long, snaking line of hundreds, sometimes thousands, of camels laden with the fruit of your labour. The Tuareg merchants, with their proud, silent demeanour, oversee the final preparations. For them, this salt is the key to immense wealth. They will guide this caravan south, a journey that can take more than a month, across one of the most hostile environments on the planet. They will face the risk of sandstorms that can bury a man alive, of dwindling water supplies, and of attacks from desert bandits who prey on these valuable convoys. The journey is a high-stakes gamble, but the potential reward is enormous. The destination for your salt is one of the great trading cities on the southern edge of the Sahara, legendary centres of learning and commerce like Timbuktu or Gao. Here, in these bustling markets, a remarkable transaction takes place. The salt from the north is traded for the gold from the south. In West Africa, which was rich in gold but had no natural salt deposits, salt was so valuable that it was often traded for its equal weight in gold dust. The salt you cut from the ground for meagre rations of millet will make kings, merchants, and empires wealthy. It will be used to preserve food, to cure leather, and as a vital nutrient for the people and livestock of the great Mali and Songhai empires. The wealth generated by this trans-Saharan trade funded the great mosques and universities of Timbuktu, turning it into a legendary centre of scholarship. But for you, back in the blinding white emptiness of Tahaza, that world is an abstraction, a distant rumour brought by the caravan leaders. Your reality remains unchanged. You watch the caravan disappear over the horizon, a dwindling line of specks in the shimmering heat. Its departure means a new supply of dates, and millet has arrived, enough to sustain you until the next convoy. But it also means the mine is ready for more work. The demand for salt is endless. You pick up your heavy axe, your body aching with a fatigue that has settled deep into your bones. You walk back to the salt pits, the glare of the sun reflecting off the ground, and you begin to cut again. You are a harvester of white gold, an invisible and expendable engine of a trade route that defines the wealth of nations. Your name will never be recorded, but the empire of salt is built upon your back. My world begins and ends with the call to prayer, the adhan, a sound that floats over the city of Córdoba from the great minaret of the Mesquita. It is not a sound that concerns me, for I serve no god but myself, but it is the rhythm by which the humans who serve me live their lives. I am what they call a gato, and my palace is the magnificent city palace of Medina Azahara, the glittering jewel of the Caliphate of Córdoba in the 10th century. While poets write epics and scholars debate the nature of the cosmos, my concerns are more profound. The location of the sunniest marble slab, the quality of the leftover fish from the caliph's table, and the tragic incompetence of the mice in the royal library. I awaken not on a dusty street, but on a cushion of emerald green silk, discarded in a quiet antechamber. The air is cool and smells of orange blossoms, jasmine, and the faint, clean scent of water from the fountains that trickle in the nearby courtyard. The floors are a mosaic of polished marble and intricate tile work, cool under my paws. This is my domain. I stretch, a slow, luxurious unfurling of muscle and bone, and begin my morning patrol. My first duty is to inspect the kitchens. I do not enter the chaotic, steamy heart of the room. I am far too dignified for that. Instead, I position myself near the entrance, a silent, graceful shadow, and observe. The servants are already a whirlwind of activity, their movements quiet and efficient. The smell of baking bread, of roasting almonds and honey fills the air. A young kitchen maid, her name is Fatima, sees me. She knows the rules. A small piece of dried fish is placed on the floor, a respectful offering. I inspect it, sniff it with an air of critical appraisal, and then consume it with a delicacy that belies my true hunger. My approval has been granted. From the kitchens I make my way to the great library. This is one of my favourite places. The Caliph, Abd al-Rahman III, has amassed one of the largest collections of books in the world, over 400,000 scrolls and codices. The library is a quiet, hallowed space, filled with the soft rustle of parchment and the low murmur of scholars. Men from all corners of the known world, Arabs, Berbers, Visigoths, and even Jewish philosophers, are here, translating the ancient works of the Greeks, like Aristotle and Plato, into Arabic. They are preserving the knowledge of a fallen world. They do not notice me as I glide between the tall wooden shelves. I am invisible to them, a ghost in their world of ink and intellect. But I have a sacred duty here, a purpose far more immediate than their philosophical debates. This library, with its priceless collection of knowledge, is under constant threat from an army of vandals, mice. They chew on the bindings, they nest in the scrolls, they threaten to consume history itself. I am the guardian of this knowledge. My hunt is silent and swift. I move through the shadows, my ears attuned to the faintest scratch or squeak. When I find my quarry, the end is quick. I do not do it for the praise of the scholars, though they often nod in appreciation. I do it because it is my nature. It is the ancient pact between my kind and theirs. They provide shelter and scraps, and we provide a world free of vermin. In a place of such immense intellect, my contribution is the most practical of all. As the sun climbs higher, the marble floors grow warm. I seek out the cooler, more secluded parts of the palace. My paws carry me towards the harem, a world within a world, a place of shaded courtyards, private gardens, and guarded doors. As a cat, I am granted access where few men are permitted. I am seen not as a threat, but as a companion, a small furry confidant. The air here is heavy with the scent of rosewater, of oud, and of the countless perfumes worn by the women of the court. I find a princess reclining on a divan, surrounded by her handmaidens. They are playing a game of chess, their laughter like the sound of small bells. She sees me and beckons me over. I leap onto the cushions beside her, and she strokes my back with long, gentle fingers, her bracelets of gold and a lapis lazuli jingling softly. She whispers secrets to me that she would never tell another human soul. I, of course, understand none of it, but I listen patiently, offering a purr in return, the universal currency of comfort. Life in the harem is one of luxury. Here, the food offerings are of the highest quality. A piece of roasted chicken, a spoonful of cream, a small date sweetened with honey. The women here have time, and they spend much of it in leisure, in music, and in the careful art of beauty. I watch them as they paint their eyes with kohl, their hands with intricate henna designs, and adorn themselves with silks from the distant east. I am a silent observer of this private feminine world, a creature of comfort in a gilded cage. This respect for my kind is deeply woven into their culture. They tell stories of the Prophet Muhammad, who so loved his cat Mweza, that he once cut off the sleeve of his own robe rather than disturb her as she slept upon it. cats, unlike dogs, are considered ritually clean and are welcome in homes and even mosques. We are seen as creatures of grace and quiet dignity, a reflection of the divine order. When the midday heat becomes too intense, I retreat to my favourite spot, a small, hidden garden with a trickling marble fountain at its centre. I find a patch of shade beneath a lemon tree and curl up on the cool, damp earth. The garden is alive with the gentle hum of bees visiting the jasmine and hibiscus flowers. The sound of the fountain is a constant, soothing murmur, a liquid lullaby. Here I sleep the deep, dreamless sleep of the truly privileged. My world is one of sensory pleasure. The warmth of the sun, the coolness of the shade, the scent of flowers, the taste of fish, the soft touch of a human hand. The great political struggles of the caliphate, the wars with Christian kingdoms to the north, the rivalries of the court, these are something to me. They are just the faint, distant noise of the human world, a world I observe but am not truly a part of. I awaken as the sun begins to set, the sky turning a deep, bruised purple. The palace stirs to life once more. The evenings are time for poetry, for music, and for feasting. I make my way back towards the great reception halls. The musicians are tuning their instruments. The oud, with its deep, melancholic voice. The kanun, a type of zither with a shimmering metallic sound. And the ney, a reed flute whose haunting melodies seem to carry the very soul of the desert wind. I find a perch on a high balcony, looking down upon the scene below. The caliph enters, and the courtiers bow. A great feast is served on low brass tables, course after course of elaborate dishes, roasted lamb with apricots, pigeon pastillas, couscous with 7 vegetables and mountains of sweet honey-drenched pastries. I watch from above, a silent king surveying my kingdom, waiting patiently for the inevitable scraps that will be offered up to me later. After the feast, when most of the palace sleeps, my true life begins. The night is my domain. I leap from the balcony onto the tiled rooftops of the Medina Sahara. This is a different world, a city of cool terracotta and silent archways, bathed in the silver light of the moon. From here I can see the distant lights of Córdoba, a sea of flickering oil lamps. I walk the roof lines with a silent, sure-footed grace, my senses alive to the nocturnal world. I hear the rustle of a gecko on a wall, the distant hoot of an owl, the faint strains of music from a late-night gathering. I'm the master of this secret, elevated world, a prowler in the caliph's paradise. I might encounter other palace cats on my journey, and we will exchange a slow blink, the universal sign of feline recognition and respect. We are a silent fraternity, the true, unseen rulers of this magnificent place. As the first faint hint of dawn appears on the eastern horizon, I make my way back down from the rooftops, returning to the world of the humans. I find my silk cushion, or perhaps another one, just as comfortable, and curl up to sleep as the adhan once again calls the city to prayer. My day is done. I have patrolled my territory. I have received my tribute. I have guarded knowledge from the forces of chaos. I have provided comfort to the powerful. And I have walked the secret paths of the night. I am just a cat, a creature of simple needs and ancient instincts. But here, in the heart of one of the most brilliant civilizations on Earth, my life is a quiet tapestry of luxury, duty, and grace. I am a palace cat of Córdoba, a silent, furry witness to the splendor of a golden age.